No great battles, no dramatic events, just the slow, gentle rhythm of daily life coming to rest as darkness falls and cold settles over cobblestone streets. We'll walk through the fading daylight, watch as shutters close, hear the distant sound of a blacksmith's final hammer strikes, and feel the warmth of a hearth as families gather inside timber-framed homes. Tonight, we're not here to learn about kings or conquests. We're here to experience the quiet, the stillness, the simple peace of an evening that has passed into history, but still whispers to us across the centuries. So settle in, close your eyes if you wish, and let yourself drift back to a time when nights were darker, quieter, and perhaps more restful than anything we know today. Please remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share in the comments where you're watching from. Now, let's begin. The winter sun hangs low in the southwestern sky, casting long shadows across the narrow streets of the town. It's late afternoon, perhaps around the 4th hour past noon, by the reckoning of the church bells, and already the light is beginning to fade. Winter days are short here, always have been, and the people of this small medieval town have learned to organize their lives around the relentless rhythm of the seasons. You stand at the edge of the market square, watching as the day's commerce slowly winds down. The square isn't large, maybe 40 paces across, surrounded on all sides by timber frame buildings that lean slightly toward each other, their upper stories jutting out over the narrow street level. The buildings are mostly 2 or 3 stories tall, with steep pitched roofs designed to shed the heavy snow that will likely come later in the winter. Some of the roofs are thatched, though increasingly, especially after the fire 3 winters past, more householders have been replacing thatch with wooden shingles, or, for those who can afford it, clay tiles. The square itself is unpaved, just packed earth that's been compressed by countless feet over the decades. In the center, there's a stone well with an iron chain and wooden bucket. A woman is there now, drawing water, her breath visible in the cold air. She's wrapped in a thick woolen cloak, dyed a deep brown, and she works methodically, hauling up the bucket with steady pulls on the chain. The water splashes into her wooden pail, and you can see how her fingers, reddened by the cold, grip the bucket's handle as she turns to carry it home. Around the edges of the square, the market stalls are being dismantled. There weren't many today, it being a regular weekday and not one of the major market days. A baker is packing away the last of his bread, dark, heavy loaves that didn't sell. He'll take them home, and they'll keep for days. Nothing goes to waste here. Beside him, a woman who sells eggs and cheese from her small farm outside the town walls is carefully placing clay pots back into a wooden cart. Her husband waits nearby, holding the lead rope of a tired-looking mule. The cold is noticeable but not yet biting. The temperature has been dropping steadily since noon, and now it must be hovering just above freezing. You can feel it in the way the air touches your face, sharp and clean, carrying with it the scent of wood smoke from 100 chimneys. There's no wind to speak of, just a gentle stillness that makes every sound carry clearly through the winter air. A group of children runs past, their wooden clogs clattering on the hard-packed earth. They're playing some game involving a leather ball, trying to get in a few more minutes of play before they're called inside for the evening. Their voices are high and clear, laughing as one of them trips and tumbles into a pile of straw that's been stacked against the side of a building. An older woman's voice calls out from a doorway, speaking in the local dialect, telling them to come inside. It's getting too cold. The children protest, but not too seriously. They know the dark is coming. You turn and begin walking down one of the streets that leads away from the square. The street is barely wide enough for 2 carts to pass, and it curves gently, following the ancient footpaths that were here before the town grew up around them. The buildings on either side are a mix of homes, workshops, and shops. Most are timber-framed, their frames filled in with wattle and daub, the walls plastered over and sometimes painted, though the paint has faded and peeled in many places. The ground floors often serve as workshops or shops, with living quarters above. You pass a blacksmith's workshop. The door is still open, and you can feel the heat radiating from inside. The blacksmith is a broad-shouldered man in his middle years, his face streaked with soot, his leather apron scorched and worn. He's working on what looks like a door hinge, heating the iron in the forge until it glows red, then hammering it on the anvil with steady rhythmic strikes. Each blow rings out clear in the cold air, a metallic sound that echoes down the street. Behind him, his apprentice, a boy of perhaps 13 or 14 years, is working the bellows, pumping air into the forge to keep the coals hot. The boy's face is flushed from the heat and the effort, and sweat dampens his hair despite the cold outside. The blacksmith pauses in his work, examining the piece of iron, then plunges it into a trough of water. Steam hisses and rises in a cloud. He looks up and sees you watching, gives a brief nod of acknowledgement. He'll work for perhaps another half hour, finishing this piece and banking the forge fire for the night. The work of a blacksmith never truly ends, but winter days are short, and even he must yield to the darkness eventually. You continue walking. Next door to the blacksmith is a carpenter's shop. The carpenter is already cleaning up for the day, sweeping wood shavings into a pile. The shavings will be saved, nothing wasted. They'll be used for kindling or spread in the stable or mixed with dung to make fuel. The carpenter is working on what appears to be a chest, a simple but sturdy piece with iron fittings. It sits on his workbench, nearly complete. He runs his hand over the surface, checking for rough spots, his fingers trained by years of work to detect the slightest imperfection. Across the street, a candle maker is closing her shutters. The shutters are heavy wooden affairs, hinged at the top, that swing up and are propped open during the day to let light into the shop. Now she's lowering them back down, securing them from the inside with wooden bars. Through the narrowing gap, you can see shelves lined with candles of various sizes, some made of tallow, others of beeswax for wealthier customers. The smell of the tallow is distinctive, slightly animal mixing with the general scent of the street. The light continues to fade. The sun is now touching the roof line of the buildings to the west, and the sky has taken on that particular quality of a winter evening, a pale blue-gray that seems to hold both light and shadow at once. Stars will be visible soon, though the brightest stars, the ones the people of this town use to tell time and season, won't be fully clear for another hour or so. You reach the end of the street and find yourself at the town wall. It's not a massive fortification, nothing like the great castles you've heard travelers speak of. It's a simple stone wall, perhaps 12 feet high, topped with a wooden palisade. There's a gate here, one of 3 that allow passage in and out of the town. The gate is still open, but 2 men are preparing to close it. They're part of the town watch, appointed by the town council to ensure security. One of them is old, perhaps 60 years, with a graying beard and a weathered face. The other is younger, maybe 30, his face still showing the remains of childhood scars from some pox. A last few people are hurrying through the gate. A farmer with his ox-drawn cart, the cart now empty after selling produce in the market. A friar in a brown habit, walking with a staff, perhaps returning to the small monastery just outside the town. A young man leading a donkey laden with bundles of firewood. The guards watch but don't stop them. These are familiar faces, people who belong to this place and its surroundings. The older guard nods to you as you approach. You exchange a few words about the weather, about how it feels like snow might be coming, though the sky is still clear. He agrees, says his joints are aching, which always means a change in the weather. His companion is checking the gate mechanism, making sure the iron hinges are working smoothly. Soon they'll swing these heavy wooden doors closed and drop the bar into place, sealing the town for the night. You climb the stone steps built into the inside of the wall, ascending to the wall walk. From here, you can see out over the surrounding countryside. The town sits on a slight rise, surrounded by fields and scattered farms. A river winds through the valley to the north, its water dark and still, reflecting the fading light. Bare trees stand in clusters, their branches stark against the sky. Smoke rises from distant farmhouses, thin gray columns that drift upward and dissipate in the still air. The fields are empty now, the harvest long finished. Some show the stubble of cut grain, others have been plowed under, the earth turned and left to freeze and thaw through the winter, which will break up the soil for spring planting. Here and there you can see sheep grazing, their thick winter wool making them look almost like stones scattered across the hillside. A shepherd in a heavy cloak watches over them, a dog at his side. The cold is settling in more noticeably now. You can feel it through your own woolen cloak, feel it beginning to penetrate the layers of clothing beneath. Your fingers are getting stiff, and you tuck them under your arms for warmth. The people of this time are accustomed to cold in a way that's hard to imagine. They live with it for months, endure it, accept it as simply the nature of winter. Their clothing is woolen, layered, practical. Their homes are drafty by any modern standard, heated only by fireplaces or small stoves, if they have them at all. You hear the sound of the gate closing below, the heavy thud of wood on wood, then the scrape of the iron bar being dropped into its brackets. The town is now sealed for the night. No one will enter or leave until dawn, unless there's some emergency. This is the way of things, has been for generations. The night is not a time for travel, not in winter, not in a world without streetlights or flashlights, or any of the other things that make darkness navigable. You descend from the wall and make your way back toward the center of the town. The streets are noticeably darker now, the sun having slipped below the horizon. The sky still holds light, that long twilight of winter, but the streets themselves are in shadow. Shutters are closed on most buildings now, but here and there light seeps through cracks or from doors left briefly open. You pass the town church, a stone building larger and more solid than most of the structures around it. It's not a grand cathedral, just a parish church, but it's the spiritual center of the community. The bell tower rises above the other buildings, and as you watch, the church bell rings, marking the hour of vespers. The sound rolls out over the town, deep and resonant, and for a moment, everything seems to pause. The bell rings 7 times, counting out the hour, and then falls silent. A few people emerge from their homes and make their way toward the church for evening prayers. Not everyone will go. Daily attendance isn't expected except on Sundays and holy days, but there are always some, the particularly devout, the elderly who find comfort in the routine, a few young people whose families have sent them. They walk quietly, their clogs and wooden-soled shoes making soft sounds on the earth. You don't follow them inside, but continue walking through the darkening streets. A cat crosses your path, moving with that particular confident grace that cats have, hunting perhaps, or just patrolling its territory. Cats are common here, valued for keeping down the rat and mouse populations. Dogs, too, though they're more often kept outside or in stables rather than in the living quarters. Ahead you see light spilling from an open door. It's a tavern, one of 3 in the town. The tavern is a simple establishment, a large room on the ground floor of a building, with a few tables and benches, a barrel of ale, and usually some simple food available. The tavern keeper is a heavy-set man with a red face and a loud voice. You can hear him now calling out to someone inside, his laughter booming. You step inside, pushing aside the heavy woolen curtain that hangs inside the door to keep out drafts. The warmth hits you immediately, a wave of heated air that smells of bodies, ale, smoke from the fireplace, and cooking food. There are perhaps a dozen people inside, mostly men, sitting at the rough wooden tables or standing near the fire. They're workers, craftsmen, finishing their day with a drink before heading home. The light comes from the fire and from a few tallow candles stuck in iron holders on the walls. It's dim by any modern standard, a flickering yellow light that creates more shadows than it dispels, but it's enough. Your eyes adjust quickly, and you can make out faces, see the steam rising from mugs of hot spiced ale. Watch the gestures as two men at a corner table engage in some animated conversation. The tavern keeper sees you and calls out a greeting. You order ale, and he dips a wooden mug into the barrel, fills it, and slides it across the scarred wooden counter. The ale is thick, slightly sour, not cold but not warm either, kept in the cellar where the temperature stays relatively constant. You sip it slowly, feeling the warmth spread through you. The conversations around you are about simple things: work, weather, neighbors. One man is complaining about a leak in his roof that he needs to fix before the next rain or snow. Another is talking about his daughter's upcoming marriage, how the dowry is arranged, where the young couple will live. A third is discussing the price of grain, whether it will go up or down as winter deepens. These are not dramatic conversations, not tales of adventure or romance, just the everyday concerns of people living ordinary lives. But there's a rhythm to it, a comfortable familiarity. These men know each other, have known each other for years, in some cases their entire lives. This is a small town, maybe 800 or 1,000 people in total, and everyone knows everyone, knows their business, their families, their histories. After a while, you finish your ale and step back outside. The cold feels even sharper after the warmth of the tavern, and you pull your cloak tighter. The twilight has deepened further. The sky is now a dark blue, and the first stars are clearly visible. There's Venus, bright and steady in the western sky. The people here call it the evening star, and they use it, along with other celestial markers, to navigate the seasons and tell time. You walk slowly through the streets, in no hurry. There's a peace to this time of evening, a sense of transition. The day's work is done, the night's rest is coming, and there's this quiet space between. Lights show from upper-story windows now, the glow of fires and candles behind shutters. You can hear muffled voices, the sound of a door closing, the distant bark of a dog. You pass a bakery, closed now, but the smell of bread still lingers. The baker will rise in the dead of night, long before dawn, to start the ovens for tomorrow's baking. But for now, the shop is dark and quiet. Further down the street, you hear the sound of singing. A woman's voice, soft and melodic, singing something that might be a lullaby. The sound comes from an upper window, slightly open despite the cold. You pause and listen for a moment. The melody is simple, repetitive, soothing. Then the voice stops, and there's silence again. You reach the town square once more. It's nearly empty now. The well standing silent in the center, the buildings around it showing only occasional points of light. The market stalls are gone, folded away until the next market day. The square seems larger in the darkness, more open, less cluttered with human activity. A figure moves across the square, and you recognize one of the night watch. He carries a lantern, a simple iron and horn construction with a candle inside. The light swings as he walks, casting moving shadows. He's making his rounds, checking doors, making sure all is well. He sees you and raises a hand in greeting, but doesn't stop. He has his route to walk, his duties to perform. You decide to head toward the edge of town, toward the section where the poorer residents live. The houses here are smaller, more tightly packed, the timber frames older and more crooked. Some are barely more than single rooms with a loft above for sleeping. but they still have their small comforts, their hearth fires, their families gathered inside. Through a gap between buildings, you can see a small courtyard shared by several families. A well stands in the center, and someone has hung laundry on a line, hoping it will dry in the cold air, though it's more likely to freeze stiff than dry. A chicken coop sits in one corner, and you can hear the soft murmuring of hens settling for the night. A door opens and a woman steps out carrying a bucket. She moves to the well, draws water, and returns inside, all without speaking. The door closes and the courtyard is empty again. These are the small necessary tasks that continue even as darkness falls. Water must be drawn, animals must be tended, fires must be fed. You think about what the evening must be like inside these homes. Families gathering around the fire, the main source of heat and light. Children being fed simple meals, bread and pottage perhaps, or if there's meat, a stew that's been simmering all day. Stories being told, songs being sung, prayers being said. The rituals of daily life repeated night after night, generation after generation. The cold is becoming more insistent now. The temperature continues to drop, and your breath makes clouds in the air. Your toes are getting numb inside your boots, and your fingers ache despite keeping them wrapped in your cloak. It's time to seek warmth and shelter. But before you do, you walk once more to the town wall, to a different section this time, where there's another set of steps leading up to the wall walk. You climb up and look out over the darkened countryside. The twilight has faded almost completely now. The land is a sea of shadows, broken only by the occasional pinpoint of light from distant farms. The sky above is clear and full of stars, more stars than you've ever seen. No light pollution to dim their brilliance. The Milky Way stretches across the heavens, a river of light. You can see the constellations that the people of this time know and use. The Great Bear, circling the pole star. Orion, the hunter, rising in the east. These stars have watched over countless winter nights, countless generations. They're the same stars, yet the world below them has changed so much. The town below is mostly dark now, just scattered points of light marking windows and open doors. Smoke continues to rise from chimneys, gray against the dark sky. The cold is deep, the silence profound. This is how nights were before electricity, before street lights, before the constant hum of machinery. Just cold, darkness, silence, and the slow passage of time. You stand there for a long moment, feeling the cold seep deeper, watching your breath cloud in the starlight. Then you descend and make your way to one of the town's modest inns, a place where travelers can find a bed and a meal. The inn is a 3-story building near the market square, its ground floor serving as a common room and tavern, the upper floors divided into small chambers for lodgers. Inside, the warmth is welcoming. There are several people in the common room, some eating a late meal, others just drinking and talking. The innkeeper, a thin man with a nervous manner, greets you and shows you to a place near the fire. You order food, and he brings you a wooden bowl of pottage, thick with barley and vegetables, a hunk of dark bread, and a cup of ale. You eat slowly, savoring the warmth of the food, feeling it spread through your body. The conversations around you continue, a low murmur of voices. Someone is talking about a merchant who passed through yesterday, bringing news from a larger town 2 days' travel to the east. Someone else is discussing the prospects for the coming year, whether the harvest will be good, whether there will be enough work. After you finish eating, the innkeeper shows you to your room on the 2nd floor. It's small, barely large enough for the narrow bed and a small chest. There's no fireplace, no heat except what rises from the common room below. The walls are bare timber, the floor unfinished planks. A small window, shuttered and covered with oiled cloth, lets in a faint bit of starlight. You lie down on the bed, fully clothed, except for your boots and outer cloak, pulling the wool blankets over you. The mattress is stuffed with straw, and it rustles as you move. The pillow is filled with chaff. By modern standards, it's uncomfortable, but by the standards of this time, it's adequate, even better than many people have. Through the walls, you can hear the sounds of the inn settling for the night. Voices downstairs, growing quieter as people finish their drinks and head home or to their own rooms. Footsteps on the stairs, doors opening and closing, the creak of floor beams, the whisper of wind against the walls. The cold is kept at bay by the blankets and by the warmth rising from below, but you can still feel it at the edges, waiting. Winter is like that here, always present, always demanding attention. You think about the people of this town, about how they've adapted to this life, how they've built their routines and rituals around the unchangeable reality of the seasons. Tomorrow, the day will start before dawn. The bakers will be already at work. The church bell will ring for the first prayers of the day. People will emerge from their homes, and the cycle will begin again. But for now, night holds the town in its cold, dark embrace, and everyone, or nearly everyone, is settling into sleep. You close your eyes and listen to the silence, broken only by the occasional sound of movement, the distant bark of a dog, the wind beginning to rise slightly, moving through the narrow streets and alleys. It's a peaceful silence, the quiet of a world without engines or electronics, without constant noise and stimulation. Just the natural sounds of a winter night and the slow, steady breathing of a town at rest. The darkness is complete. No streetlights, no glow on the horizon, nothing but the stars above and the cold earth below. This is how humanity lived for millennia, through countless winter nights, accepting the darkness, working with it rather than against it. Rising with the sun, resting with its setting, following the ancient rhythms that governed all life. As you drift towards sleep, you think about how different this life is from anything you know, yet how the essential things remain the same. People still work, still love, still fear, still hope. They still gather around fires, still tell stories, still find comfort in familiar faces and familiar places. The details have changed, but the human experience in its essence remains. The night deepens, the town sleeps, and you, warm enough under your wool blankets, surrounded by the sounds and smells of a medieval winter night, let yourself drift into the same sleep that has claimed the town. You wake briefly, unsure of how long you've been asleep. It might be an hour, might be 2. The darkness is absolute, the kind of darkness that only exists in a world without artificial light. You lie still for a moment, listening, trying to orient yourself in the unfamiliar room. The sounds from downstairs have ceased completely. The inn is quiet now, everyone either gone home or retired to their rooms. You can hear the building itself, the timbers creaking as they contract in the cold, the whisper of wind finding its way through gaps in the walls. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks once, twice, then falls silent. You rise carefully, feeling your way in the darkness to the small window. Your fingers find the edge of the shutter, and you ease it open slightly, careful not to make noise that might disturb other sleepers. Cold air rushes in, sharp and immediate, making you catch your breath. But with it comes a faint light, starlight, and perhaps a bit of moonlight, though you can't see the moon from this angle. You look out over the town. From this height, on the second floor, you can see across the rooftops, see the angular shapes of buildings black against a slightly lighter sky. Here and there, a very faint glow marks a window where someone is still awake, or where a fire still burns bright enough to show through cracks in shutters. But mostly, the town is dark, surrendered to night. The cold drives you back from the window, and you close the shutter, securing it against the draft. You make your way back to the bed, guided by memory and careful movements, and settle back under the blankets. But you're fully awake now, and instead of trying to force sleep, you simply lie there, thinking about the town around you, about the lives being lived in the darkness. In a house not far from the inn, perhaps 3 streets over, a family is finishing their evening routine. The house belongs to a weaver, a man named Thomas, who works with wool, creating the cloth that will be made into clothing, blankets, and other necessities. His workshop occupies the ground floor, where his loom stands against one wall, along with the various tools of his trade, spinning wheels, baskets of raw wool, skeins of finished yarn. But now in the evening, the workshop is silent and dark. The family has retired to the living quarters on the 2nd floor, a single large room that serves as kitchen, dining area, and sleeping space all in one. A fire burns in the hearth, not a large fire, just enough to provide heat and a bit of light. Firewood is precious, every log counted, and it must last through the long winter. Thomas sits on a stool near the fire, working on a piece of harness that needs mending. His hands move steadily, pulling thread through leather, his movements automatic from years of practice. He's a man in his late 30s, his hair already showing gray, his face weathered from long hours of work. Beside him, his wife Margaret is spinning, her fingers guiding wool onto the spindle with practiced ease. She's younger than her husband by a few years, her face still smooth, though her hands are work-worn and rough. Their children are nearby. The oldest, a boy of 12 named John, sits on the floor near the fire, working on his own small project, carving a piece of wood with a knife, making what might become a whistle or a small toy. He's learning his father's trade, spending his days at the loom or helping to prepare wool, but the evenings are his own time, more or less. 2 younger children, girls of 8 and 5, are already in bed, or what passes for bed. It's a wooden frame in the corner of the room, raised off the floor, with a mattress stuffed with straw and wool. They share this bed, huddled together under wool blankets and a coverlet made from scraps of fabric sewn together. The youngest, little Anne, is already asleep, her breathing soft and steady. Her sister Emma is still awake, listening to the quiet sounds of her parents working, the crackle of the fire, the wind outside. The room is lit only by the fire, and the light it casts is warm but dim, creating a small circle of illumination that fades quickly into shadows at the edges of the room. The walls are timber and plaster, undecorated except for a simple wooden cross hanging near the door and a shelf that holds a few pottery vessels and wooden bowls. Margaret finishes her spinning and sets aside the spindle. She rises and moves to the wooden table that stands in the center of the room, where she begins preparing something for tomorrow. She takes a wooden bowl and measures out flour, adding water and a bit of salt, mixing it together to make dough. Her hands work the dough, kneading it, and she shapes it into small loaves that she sets aside on a wooden board. In the morning, before the household fully wakes, she'll bake these over the fire, providing fresh bread for the day's meals. Thomas looks up from his work and watches his wife for a moment. There's something peaceful about this scene, something timeless. The quiet companionship of a husband and wife, working side by side, each at their own tasks, comfortable in the silence. No words are needed, none exchanged. They've been married for 15 years, lived through hardships and small joys, buried one child who died in infancy, raised 3 others. This is their life, and they know it as completely as they know the rhythm of their own breathing. Young John yawns, his hand going to his mouth. His mother sees and speaks softly, telling him it's time for sleep. He doesn't argue, just nods and puts away his carving, carefully placing the knife on a high shelf where the younger children can't reach it. He moves to the bed where his sisters already sleep, removes his outer tunic and shoes, and climbs in, squeezing into the space beside Emma. She murmurs something in her half-sleep, but doesn't wake fully. Margaret finishes with the bread dough and covers it with a cloth. Then she banks the fire, using a long iron poker to push the burning logs together, adding a few pieces of peat that will burn slowly through the night, keeping some warmth in the room. She doesn't extinguish the fire completely. That would mean having to restart it in the morning, a tedious process of striking sparks and nursing them into flame. Better to keep it going, even if just barely, so that morning cooking can begin with minimal effort. Thomas has finished his mending. He stands, stretching, his joints cracking. He's not an old man, but the work is hard, and winters are always difficult. The cold settling into bones and making everything ache. He and Margaret exchange a few quiet words, discussing the next day's work, what needs to be done, who needs to be paid, what supplies are running low. Then they too prepare for bed. Their bed is in another corner of the room, larger than the children's, but not by much. It's the one luxury they've allowed themselves, a proper wooden bed frame with a thicker mattress, stuffed with wool rather than just straw. Margaret removes her outer dress and head covering, folding them carefully and placing them on a chest at the foot of the bed. Thomas does the same with his outer tunic and belt. They keep on their inner garments, linen shifts that provide another layer against the cold. They climb into bed together, pulling up the blankets and a heavy coverlet. The bed is cold at first, the sheets and blankets having absorbed the chill of the room, but gradually their body heat begins to warm the small space. Margaret says a short prayer, crossing herself, and Thomas murmurs his agreement. Then they settle, lying close together for warmth. The fire has died down to embers now, providing almost no light, just a faint red glow. The room falls into darkness, broken only by the suggestion of starlight through the small shuttered window. Outside, the wind picks up slightly, making a low sound as it moves through the narrow streets, around corners, through alleys. Across the town, in a house near the church, a very different scene is unfolding. This is the home of the town's priest, Father Benedict. It's a modest stone building, better built than most of the houses in town, but not grand. 2 stories with a small attached chapel where Father Benedict can say private prayers or meet with individuals who seek counsel. Father Benedict is a man of perhaps 50 years, gray-haired, thin, with the careful movements of someone who has lived a life of discipline and routine. He's been the priest of this parish for nearly 20 years, coming here as a young man, fresh from his studies, full of ideals and energy. The years have tempered him, taught him the realities of ministering to a small town, the endless cycle of births and deaths, marriages and funerals, confessions and absolutions. Tonight, he sits in his small study on the upper floor, a candle burning on the desk before him. The candle is beeswax, a luxury that the church can afford where most households cannot. The light is clearer, brighter than tallow, and the scent is pleasant, a sweet honey smell that fills the room. He's reading, or trying to read, a religious text, a commentary on scripture written in Latin. His eyes, not as strong as they once were, struggle with the text in the dim light, and he finds his mind wandering. He's tired. It's been a long day, and there's a matter weighing on him, a dispute between 2 families in the town that he's been asked to mediate, a complicated affair involving a boundary line and accusations of theft. He sets aside the book and rises, moving to the window. Like you earlier, he opens the shutter a crack and looks out over the town. He can see his church, its stone tower dark against the sky. He thinks about his responsibilities, about the souls entrusted to his care, about the fact that most of them will die without ever traveling more than a day's walk from where they were born. It's not a grand life, not what he might have imagined as a young man studying in the city, but it's a real life, a life of service. He knows these people, knows their struggles, their sins, their small triumphs. He's baptized their children, married them, buried their dead. He's heard their confessions, granted absolution, offered what comfort he could in times of grief and fear. He closes the shutter and returns to his desk. He extinguishes the candle, a practiced pinch of wetted fingers, and the room plunges into darkness. He makes his way by memory to his bed, a narrow frame with a thin mattress, more austere than most. Then he climbs into bed, pulling up a single wool blanket. The cold is sharp here, the room having no fire, just the residual warmth that rises from the ground floor where his housekeeper, an elderly widow who cooks and cleans for him, has her own small room. He's used to the cold, has trained himself not to feel it, or at least not to complain about it. Suffering, small suffering, is part of the spiritual life, or so he was taught. He lies in the darkness and thinks about God, about faith, about the eternal questions that have no easy answers. Why does God allow suffering? Why are some born to wealth and others to poverty? What becomes of the soul after death? These questions have occupied theologians for centuries, and they occupy Father Benedict now, in the quiet hours before sleep. Eventually his thoughts slow, become less coherent, and he drifts towards sleep, his breathing deepening, his body relaxing into the thin mattress. In another part of town, in one of the poorer sections, a different kind of household is settling in. This is the home of a day laborer named William, a man who owns no land, practices no particular trade, but survives by hiring himself out for whatever work is available. He loads carts, digs ditches, helps with harvests, moves goods, does whatever needs doing for whoever will pay. His home is barely more than a hovel, a single room built of timber and mud, with a thatched roof that leaks in several places. There's no proper floor, just packed earth, and no windows, just a few small gaps in the walls that let in light during the day and drafts at night. A fire pit in the center of the room provides heat and cooking space, with a hole in the roof above to let out smoke, though much of it lingers, stinging eyes and coating everything with soot. William lives here with his wife Alice and their 4 children, ranging in age from 10 years down to a baby of just 8 months. The space is cramped, overcrowded, and the poverty is evident in every detail. The children wear clothing that's been patched and mended countless times. Their shoes are worn through, and their faces, even after washing, show the ingrained dirt of poverty. Tonight, Alice is trying to soothe the baby, who is fretful and crying. She rocks him, walking back and forth in the small space, murmuring to him, but he won't settle. He might be teething, or he might be hungry. Alice's milk has been less plentiful lately, her own nutrition insufficient, and the baby, though he suckles, doesn't seem satisfied. William sits by the fire, his face grim. He's worried about the winter, about whether they'll have enough food to last, enough fuel to keep warm. He managed to get work today, helping to unload a cart at the market, and he was paid a few pennies, enough to buy some barley and a bit of salted fish. But tomorrow? Next week? There are no guarantees, and winter is always the hardest time when work becomes scarce and prices rise. The other children are huddled together in the corner, sharing a pile of straw covered with a thin blanket. They're not asleep. They can't sleep with the baby crying, but they lie still, eyes open, waiting. The oldest, a girl named Mary, watches her mother with worried eyes. She's old enough to understand the family's situation, old enough to feel the weight of it. Eventually, the baby's cries subside into whimpers, and then he falls asleep against Alice's shoulder, exhausted. She carefully lays him down on a makeshift bed, just a wooden box padded with rags, and covers him with a scrap of cloth. Then she slumps down beside William, and he puts his arm around her, a rare gesture of affection. No words pass between them, but the weight of unspoken worries hangs heavy in the smoky air. The fire dies down gradually. William doesn't add more fuel. They need to conserve what little they have. The room grows cold and everyone huddles closer, seeking warmth from each other. This is how they'll sleep, crowded together, cold, hungry, but surviving one more night. These are the realities of medieval life, often overlooked in romantic visions of the past. For every comfortable merchant or prosperous craftsman, there are families like William's living on the edge, one misfortune away from disaster. They have no safety net, no social services, no unemployment insurance. They have only their own labor, their own endurance, and whatever charity the church or their neighbors might offer. Back in your room at the inn, you continue to lie awake, your mind wandering through the town, imagining the various households settling into their night routines. You think about the diversity of experience, how the same winter night is experienced so differently depending on circumstances of birth and fortune. You imagine the town's merchant, perhaps the wealthiest man in town aside from the lord who owns the manor just outside the walls. His house is the finest in town, 3 stories well built, with glass in some of the windows. Real glass, not just oiled cloth or shutters. He has multiple fireplaces, servants, plenty of food stored for the winter, furs and fine wool for warmth. His evening would have included a substantial meal, perhaps roasted meat, white bread, wine. His bed would have linen sheets, a feather mattress, heavy quilts. Yet even he is not immune to the cold, to the darkness, to the uncertainty of life in this era. He too must worry about disease, about accidents, about changes in fortune. Wealth provides comfort, but not security, not in any ultimate sense. Death comes for rich and poor alike, and death in this era is ever present, always near. You think about the night watch, the men tasked with walking the streets through the cold hours, keeping guard. One of them is out there now. You can imagine him moving through the dark streets with his lantern, checking doors, listening for anything unusual. It's a lonely job, a cold job, but someone must do it. The town cannot simply sleep unguarded, not with the ever-present threats of fire, theft, or violence. The watchman's name might be Robert, a man of middle years who does this work to supplement his income from his small farm outside town. He walks slowly, methodically, following his established route through the streets. His lantern creates a small bubble of light around him, but beyond it, the darkness is complete. His breath clouds in the cold air, and he stamps his feet periodically to keep blood flowing, to fight off the numbing cold. He pauses at intervals to call out the hour, a traditional duty of the night watch. His voice rings out in the silent streets, announcing that it's now the 10th hour since sunset, that all is well, that citizens should sleep secure. The call echoes and fades, and then there's silence again, just the sound of his footsteps continuing on their round. In the monastery outside town, the monks are observing their own nighttime routines. This is a small monastic community, perhaps a dozen monks following the Benedictine rule. Their night is divided into periods of prayer and sleep, a cycle that continues regardless of season or weather. At this hour, they've already observed compline the last prayers of the day and have retired to their cells for a few hours of sleep. But soon, in the deep heart of the night, the bell will ring for matins, calling them to rise and pray even while the world sleeps. This is their discipline, their sacrifice, their offering to God. The monastery is dark, the church unlit except for the sanctuary lamp that burns perpetually. The monks sleep in individual cells, small rooms barely large enough for a bed and a stool, unheated, austere. They sleep in their habits, ready to rise at the bell's call. Their sleep is not the deep, unbroken sleep of exhaustion, but something lighter, trained by years of this routine to respond instantly to the summons to prayer. Brother Michael, one of the younger monks, perhaps 25 years old, lies in his cell, unable to sleep. He's struggling with doubts, questions about his vocation, wondering if he truly belongs in this life of prayer and solitude. He thinks about the town, about the ordinary life he gave up when he entered the monastery, about family and friends he left behind. He prays for guidance, for certainty, for peace, but the questions remain. These inner struggles are hidden from the world, known only to God and perhaps to the abbot to whom Brother Michael makes confession. Outwardly, he performs his duties faithfully, attends all the prayers, does his assigned work, gives no sign of his interior turmoil. But nights are hard, when the mind is free to wander, when doubts surface that the busy daylight keeps at bay. You shift in your bed at the inn, adjusting the blankets, trying to find a more comfortable position on the straw mattress. Your body is adjusting to the cold, finding its own warmth beneath the layers of wool. The sounds of the inn have fallen away completely now. If others are awake, they give no sign. The building is silent except for the usual creaks and sighs of timber in the cold. You think about sleep, about how different it was in this era compared to modern times. There was no expectation of 8 uninterrupted hours. Sleep came in segments, first sleep and second sleep, with a period of wakefulness in between. People would wake in the middle of the night, lie awake for an hour or so, pray or think or talk quietly with their spouse, and then drift back to sleep until dawn. This segmented sleep was natural, driven by the body's own rhythms and by the structure of the long winter nights. Without artificial light to extend the day, people went to bed earlier, slept, woke, slept again. It was only later, with the coming of industrialization and electric light, that consolidated sleep became the norm. In Thomas the Weaver's house, Margaret stirs in her sleep, waking partially. She lies still for a moment, listening to her husband's breathing beside her, to the soft sounds of her children sleeping across the room. The fire has died down to barely glowing embers, providing almost no light and little warmth. The cold has crept into the room, and she can feel it on her face, the only part of her not covered by blankets. She thinks about tomorrow's tasks, mentally organizing her day. There's bread to bake, laundry to do if the weather permits, wool to card, vegetables to prepare. The endless cycle of household work, never done, always waiting. But she doesn't resent it. It's simply life. The life she knows, the life her mother knew, the life her daughters will know. She thinks about her oldest daughter, Emma, who is growing fast, soon to be old enough to begin learning household skills in earnest, eventually old enough to marry. Margaret wonders what kind of life Emma will have, whether she'll marry well, whether she'll find happiness, whether she'll survive childbirth when her time comes. These are the perpetual worries of mothers, transcending time and place. After a while, Margaret's thoughts slow and fragment, and she drifts back into sleep, her breathing deepening, matching the rhythm of her husband's. Across the room, young Emma has also woken briefly. She lies in the dark, squeezed between her brother and sister, feeling their warmth, listening to their breathing. She's not afraid of the dark. She's never known anything else. This is simply how nights are, have always been, will always be. She thinks about the day just past, about a moment in the market when she saw a boy she knows, the son of the carpenter, and how he smiled at her. She's at the age where such things are beginning to matter, where the world is opening up beyond just family and immediate surroundings. She holds the memory of that smile, treasures it, and then lets sleep claim her again. In Father Benedict's house, the priest has fallen into a light sleep, but wakes suddenly, startled by some dream he can't quite remember. He lies still, his heart beating faster, gradually calming as he orients himself, recognizes his own room, his own bed. He says a brief prayer, asking for protection from evil dreams, from the temptations of the night. The hours of darkness were considered dangerous in medieval thought, a time when evil spirits might be abroad, when the soul was vulnerable. Prayers and rituals provided protection, or at least the comfort of believing in protection. Father Benedict has said these prayers countless times, and they bring him peace now, allowing his breathing to slow, his body to relax. He thinks about the sermon he'll give on Sunday, trying to decide what message his flock needs to hear. Should he speak of sin and redemption, of the importance of charity, of the hope of salvation? He knows his congregation well, knows their strengths and weaknesses, their petty sins and occasional virtues. They're ordinary people, neither saints nor great sinners, just humans trying to live as best they can. He decides on a theme of endurance, of patience, of accepting the hardships of this life with faith that a better life awaits. It's a message suited to winter, to the cold and dark and scarcity that everyone faces. He begins to compose the sermon in his mind, choosing his words carefully, drawing on scripture and the teachings of the church fathers. But gradually the effort becomes too much. His tired mind can't maintain focus, and the half-formed sentences dissolve into fragments and then into nothing as sleep takes him again. In William the laborer's hovel, the fire has gone out completely, and the cold is severe. The family huddles together in a mass of bodies, sharing what warmth they can generate. Alice wakes periodically to check on the baby, making sure he's still breathing, still warm enough. The baby sleeps fitfully, whimpering in his sleep, and Alice softly strokes his head, murmuring wordless sounds of comfort. William doesn't sleep well. He's too cold, too worried, his mind churning with problems that have no easy solutions. He thinks about going to the church tomorrow, asking Father Benedict for help, but he's already done that twice this winter, and he knows the church's charity has limits. There are too many poor, too few resources. He thinks about the spring, about how if he can just make it through this winter, there will be work then, planting and building and all the labor that comes with the warmer months. But spring is months away, and the winter stretches before him like an endless trial. His wife shifts beside him, and he puts his arm more firmly around her, offering what comfort he can. They don't speak. There's nothing to say that hasn't been said before. They simply endure, hour by hour, night by night, holding on to life and each other with grim determination. Across town, in the house of the merchant, the scene is more comfortable but not without its own concerns. The merchant, whose name is Geoffrey, lies in his substantial bed, his wife beside him, both of them warm beneath proper linen sheets and heavy quilts. But Geoffrey is awake, his mind occupied with business matters. He's worried about a shipment of cloth that should have arrived from Flanders but hasn't. Winter makes travel difficult, and delays are common, but delays mean lost revenue, disappointed customers, problems that cascade into other problems. He's also concerned about a debt owed to him by a knight in a neighboring manor, a man who has been slow to pay and whose finances are rumored to be troubled. Money, trade, reputation. These are Geoffrey's concerns, different from William's worries but no less real to him. He's built his wealth carefully over decades, starting from modest beginnings, and he's always aware of how quickly fortune can turn. He's seen other merchants fail, seen them lose everything to bad luck or bad judgment, and he's determined that won't happen to him. His wife, sleeping beside him, knows nothing of these worries. He doesn't share them with her, doesn't think it's her place to be burdened with such matters. She has her own domain, the household, and she manages it well, and that's enough. This division of concerns is accepted, expected, the natural order of things as understood in this time and place. Eventually, Jeffrey's thoughts slow, and he too drifts back toward sleep, his body warm and comfortable, even as his mind remains troubled. The night deepens further. If there were a clock, it might show midnight approaching, though such precision in timekeeping is rare. Most people measure the night by its feel, its depth, by the quality of the darkness and silence. This is the deep night, the cold heart of the winter darkness, when the world seems most still, most removed from the bustle and noise of day. The temperature continues to drop. In houses throughout the town, fires have died to embers or gone out entirely. People huddle beneath whatever covers they have, seeking warmth in shared beds, in piles of blankets and furs for those who have them, in the simple body heat of family members pressed close together. The streets are empty, silent. The night watchman has completed another circuit and pauses for a moment in the market square, standing near the well, his lantern creating a small sphere of light in the vast darkness. He's tired, cold to the bone, and there are hours yet before dawn brings relief. But this is his duty, and he performs it faithfully, as his father did before him, as his son might do after him. He calls out the hour again, his voice strong despite the cold, proclaiming that all is well, that the town is secure. The call echoes off the buildings and fades into silence. He adjusts his cloak, shifts his grip on the lantern, and continues his rounds, his footsteps marking a lonely rhythm in the sleeping town. Above, the stars wheel slowly across the sky, the constellations following their eternal paths. The Milky Way is a river of light overhead, brighter than most people today have ever seen it, undiminished by light pollution. The moon, if you could see it, is waning, a crescent hanging in the eastern sky providing little light. The winter night is long, cold, and dark, and it seems as if it will last forever. But this too is temporary. This too will pass. Dawn will come, as it always comes, bringing light and warmth and the resumption of activity. But that's hours away yet, and for now the night holds sway, and the town rests in its cold embrace. And so our journey through this quiet winter night in a medieval town comes to a close. We've walked through darkening streets, watched as shutters closed and fires were banked, listened to the sounds of families settling in for the long, cold night. We've seen the merchant in his comfortable bed and the laborer huddling with his family against the cold. We've observed the priest at his prayers and the monks in their cells, the weaver's family finding rest after a day of work, and the night watchman making his lonely rounds. This was just one night in one small town centuries ago. Yet in many ways it was like countless other nights, before and since. People seeking warmth, seeking rest, seeking comfort in the familiar rhythms of daily life. Thank you for joining us on this peaceful journey into the past. If you enjoyed this quiet exploration of history, please like this video, subscribe to Boring History and Sleep, and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Until next time, sleep well.